Good morning, students. We will talk about miscellaneous disorders affecting nose, paranasal sinus, and nasal cavity today in this lecture. First one is foreign bodies in the nose. This is usually seen in children whenever patient has rhinitis and itching in the nose. They usually insert some of the small uh, organic or inorganic material into their nasal cavity. The usual found foreign bodies are piece of paper, chalk, button, pebbles, and different seeds. Seeds of different plants can increase in size after inserting into the nasal cavity due to their hygroscopic nature. If foreign body is present for a long time, it can give to unilateral foul smelling nasal discharge, and whenever there is a foreign body for long standing in a single unilateral nasal cavity, it will cause the stagnation of the nasal secretion into the nasal cavity, and there will be formation of granulation tissue surrounding the foreign body, and this will cause the foul smelling nasal discharge. So whenever a young child comes to the OPD with unilateral foul smelling long time nasal discharge, you should suspect foreign body in that patient. If a patient has inserted radio opaque foreign body, X-ray can be done, X-ray nasal bone or X-ray paranasal sinuses can be done to know the exact site and whether foreign body is present or not. Differential diagnosis for foreign bodies are rhinolith, nasal diphtheria, nasal myiasis, and sinusitis. In rhinolith, there will be formation of stone in nasal cavity, which will give rise to the same blood-stained nasal foul-smelling discharge. Nasal diphtheria will give rise to scabs and crusting in the nasal cavity. Nasal myiasis can give rise to blood-stained foul-smelling nasal discharge with myiasis maggots in the nasal cavity. Sinusitis give rise to unilateral nasal obstruction with nasal discharge. In this diagram you can see there is green color round foreign body present in the left nasal cavity, and this is the X-ray PNS of a child suggestive of radio opaque screw like foreign body in the left side nasal cavity. Treatment: if patient has inserted piece of paper or cotton, it can be removed by forceps. If there is a round foreign body, it can be removed by blunt hook or eustachian tube catheter or scoop. In this diagram you can see that if a patient has inserted a round foreign body which is present in the anterior part of the nose, that can be removed by a hook. Here we will insert the hook, and this hook will be taken to the posterior part of the foreign body, and after that this hook will be taken anteriorly, so the foreign body will come out with the hook. Sometimes whenever the foreign body is present in posterior part of nasal cavity, general anesthesia will be required to remove the foreign body. Complication of long standing nasal foreign bodies are nasal infection and sinusitis due to the blockage of the middle meatus and ostia of different sinuses. Rhinolith formation, that is the stone in the nasal cavity, which will be discussed later in the slides, that rhinolith formation can occur in this type of patient if patient has long standing foreign body. If foreign body is very small, it can go inhaled into the trachea and bronchus, from the nasal cavity to nasopharynx, and nasopharynx to larynx to trachea and bronchus, and patient can develop difficulty in breathing. Long standing foreign body can give pressure over the septum and can give rise to the septal perforation. Second miscellaneous disorder is rhinolith, that is the stone formation in the cavity. Lith matlab means stone. It is usually forms around the nucleus of an exogenous foreign body, blood clot, or insipid secretions. So whenever there is a blood clot, insipid secretion or foreign body in the nasal cavity, there will be slow deposition of calcium and magnesium salt around that foreign body or blood clot or secretions, and this will rise to the different size rhinolith. If it is very large, it can cause pressure necrosis and septal perforation also. Usual clinical features for rhinolith are foul smelling, whitish to yellowish purulent nasal discharge, which is sometimes blood stained due to the formation of granulations. It is usually more common in adults. Symptoms are unilateral nasal obstruction, foul smelling, sometimes blood-stained nasal discharge, epistaxis and neuralgic pain can occur. Nasal endoscopy will give you the idea about the extent of the rhinolith formation. A grey, brown or black color mass with stony hard fill is seen in the nasal cavity. CT scan is useful. CT-PNS is useful to extent for the extent and diagnosis of rhinolith formation. It is usually done under general anesthesia. In this diagram you can see there is formation of stone here in the right nasal cavity. This is the septum, this is the lateral wall of the nose. These stone are of different size and of tortuous structure because of the tortuous cavity, nasal cavity. So they can give rise to this like this, according to the availability of the space in the nasal cavity. This is the another diagram of showing rhinolith formation in the nasal cavity. Nasal myiasis, that is known as maggots in the nasal cavity. Maggots are the larval form of flies. Flies usually is the Chrysomia. This is a Chrysomia fly, and these are the maggots which are the larval form of the Chrysomia fly. Whenever there is infestation of this myiasis in the nasal cavity, it will form maggots in the nose in the larval forms. Predisposing factors are atrophic rhinitis, syphilis, leprosy and infected wounds over the nasal cavity. Flies are usually seen in August to October in the monsoon season. So these maggots in the nose and different other parts of the body are more common during the August to October of the year. This atrophic rhinitis, syphilis and leprosy and infected wounds will give rise to the foul smelling nasal discharge. This foul smelling nasal discharge will give attraction to the fly, and then whenever this fly hatch eggs in the nasal cavity, it will form maggots. Those are the larval form of the fly, and they will reach up to the different parts of the nasal cavity and cause the different types of destruction. In first to 4 days of the maggots in the nose, there will be irritation, sneezing, lacrimation, headache and blood stained nasal discharge with edema over the paranasal sinuses, eyelid, and it can also give rise to the epistaxis. After 4th or 5th day, maggots will crawl out the nose and we will have the diagnosis. In first 3 to 4 days, on the anterior rhinoscopy, you can see the maggots in the nasal cavity. Here in this diagram you can see that patient has a wound over the nasal cavity and patient does not have good taken care of the wound, and after that patient developed maggots in the nose. Here on the anterior rhinoscopy you can see the maggots in the nasal cavity. Sometimes they are too deep, then you will need nasal endoscopy to find out the exact cause of the foul smelling nasal discharge, which is blood stain. Here in this nasal endoscopy you can see there are many maggots which are situated in the nasal cavity with formation of slough, foul smelling slough and bleeding. There will be destruction of the nose, sinuses, face and eye, and whenever this infection can reach up to the cribriform plate and meninges, it can give rise to meningitis. So these maggots will cause destruction of bones, mucosa, submucosa and muscle tissue also. So whatever comes in their way they will eat. So these maggots need to be removed as early as possible and diagnosis should be done as early as possible. Here you can see that patient had developed maggots in the nose which have also eroded the lamina papracia, that is the bony separation between orbit and nasal cavity. They have also removed the lamina papracia which is a bone, and after that they have also infested in the orbit and there is loss of orbital cavity. Treatment is whenever we have visible maggots they should be removed with the forceps. Usually whenever we try to remove the maggots in the nasal cavity, they will go deep into the nasal cavity, into the sinuses and into the deep parts of the nasal cavity. So we can instill this chloroform and oil so that they will come out of that sinuses and they will come out of the nasal cavity, and after that we can remove them with the forceps or kill them. Nasal douche, we have already discussed alkaline nasal douching in the discussion of atrophic rhinitis. Those type of alkaline nasal douching can be used to remove the slough, crust and dead maggots. Patient should be isolated with a mosquito net so that the another fly will not reach up to the patient and will not keep the continuation of the cycle. Nasal hygiene should be explained before the discharge of the patient. Fourth miscellaneous disorder is nasal synechia. Synechia is adhesion formation between the nasal septum and terminates by scar tissue. So whenever patient has a scar over septum or inferior turbinate, it will heal by crusting formation and after that there will be mucosal formation. But whenever this crust attached to both the lateral wall of the nose and septum, this crust will give rise to the mucosa formation and they will form a bridge between the lateral wall of nose and septum, and after that it will form the nasal synechia. Here you can see this is the septum and this is the lateral wall of the nose, but whenever there is a scar over here or here, it will have crusting over this part, and this crusting will heal by mucosal attachment between these two walls of the nasal cavity, medial wall and lateral wall, and this will form the nasal synechia. This is the nasal synechia. Causes are septal surgery, polypectomy, removal of foreign body and raw area after removal of that foreign body from the local site, reduction of the nasal fracture. Intranasal packing can give rise to the erosion over the mucosal erosion over the septum and lateral wall, and it can give rise to the formation of nasal synechia. Symptoms are usually nasal obstruction, sinusitis, headache and nasal discharge. Treatment is we have to remove the nasal synechia after injection of local anesthetic over the local part, and after removal of that nasal synechia we can place a thin silastic or cell phone sheet between the septum and turbinate so that the nasal synechia will not reoccur. Sheet is usually changed every 2 to 3 days until the healing occurs over the local site. Here you can see that this is the medial wall of the nasal cavity and this is the lateral wall, that is the left side inferior turbinate, and there is a mucosal bridge or adhesion which is known as nasal synechia in the left side nasal cavity. After injection in the local anesthesia, this nasal synechia is removed between here, and after that there will be we will insert a sheet, silastic sheet, so that this both row area will recover without formation of this type of synechia. Another disease is choanal atresia. Whenever there is incomplete continuation of the nasal cavity into the nasopharynx and from nasopharynx into the oropharynx due to the persistence of bucconasal membrane. It will form the choanal atresia. It is more common unilaterally than bilaterally and usually bony in 90% of cases. Sometimes it is membranous in 10% of cases. Unilateral atresia may remain undiagnosed till adult life because it will not develop symptom in children. Bilateral atresia present with respiratory obstruction in newborn. So this is the unilateral choanal atresia in which you can see this is the posterior nasopharynx. This whole part is a nasal endoscopic image of the posterior nasopharynx. And here you can see the septum, and this is the left nasal cavity and this is the right nasal cavity, in which you see the membrane over the right nasal cavity which will cause the obstruction in the nasopharynx. Now here this is a unilateral choanal atresia. So patient have unilateral nasal obstruction. Patient breathe from this side. But whenever this is bilateral in children, this both area will block the air coming from the nasal cavity to go into the larynx and trachea. But children are born oblique nasal breathers. They cannot open their mouth and do the mouth breathing. So those type of child with bilateral choanal atresia can develop nasal obstruction with difficulty in breathing in early days of his or her life, and that can go into the respiratory distress because of their obligate nasal breathing. So those type of children may need tracheostomy also sometimes to prevent the respiratory distress. Now how can we diagnose this? There is presence of mucoid discharge in the nasal cavity if unilateral in one side and if it is bilateral in both sides. Absence of air bubbles in the nasal discharge. Whenever we pass the catheter from the nose to the pharynx, it will not go from the unilateral nasal cavity if patient has unilateral nasal choanal atresia. We can put a dye in the nose and see if it will come into the nasopharynx or not, and by that we can diagnose choanal atresia on unilateral and bilateral side. Whenever we inject a radio opaque dye in the nasal cavity externally, that will go into the nasopharynx and we can take a X-ray nasopharynx and we can diagnose that dye has come into the nasopharynx and oropharynx or not. CT scan usually done to confirm the diagnosis and to confirm the bony or membranous segment. Here you can see the CT scan image of the bilateral choanal atresia in which there is this both bony buccal membrane has give rise to bilateral choanal atresia. In this image you can see no bone but only membrane is present and there is formation of membranous bilateral choanal atresia. Treatment is in bilateral atresia. A feeding nipple with large hole is used, that is known as McGovern's technique. Tracheostomy may be required to prevent the respiratory distress, and definitive surgery is by transnasal or transpalatal approach to remove the persistent bony or membranous bucconasal membrane. Last one is CSF rhinorrhea. CSF is usually present in the subarachnoid space and it is not usually present in the nasal cavity. But whenever there is nasal cavity is in close relation with the brain and cribriform plate. So whenever there is bony defect that is connecting brain with the cavity or bony defect which can connect subarachnoid space with cavity, CSF to the nasal cavity, and that is known as CSF. Yeah. It is the clear CSF into the nasal cavity. Etiology is usually it is traumatic after the head injury or post-surgical osteoma of the frontoethmoidal region or pituitary tumor can give rise to the CSF rhinorrhea. Congenital defects in the skull associated with encephalocele, and sometimes it can be spontaneous in a patient of hypertension or diabetes mellitus. In congenital defect, there will be absence of skull base, bony skull base, and it will give rise to some of the part of the meninges with brain will go into the nasal cavity, and it will form the encephalocele, that is encephalocele, and that can give rise to the CSF rhinorrhea. Osteoma of frontoethmoidal region can give rise to the CSF rhinorrhea by breaching the anterior cranial fossa. Three main sites for the leakage of the CSF rhinorrhea. First one is CSF coming from the anterior cranial fossa. It will go into the cribriform plate. From there, it will go into the ethmoidal cavity and frontal sinus and go into the nasal cavity. CSF from middle cranial fossa can go into the sphenoid sinus, and from sphenoid sinus it will go into the nasal cavity. CSF from the middle ear can go into the ischiation tube, and from ischiation tube it can go into the nasal cavity or nasopharynx. So that is known as otorhinorrhea, because it has first middle ear and after mid it has gone into the nasal cavity. So that is known as rhinorrhea. This is usually occurred after injury over the temporal region. This is a diagrammatic representation of the CSF rhinorrhea, in which CSF gone into the nasal cavity from sphenoid space. CSF rhinorrhea should be demarcated differently from the clear fluid or nasal discharge coming from the nasal cavity. So whenever history is there, CSF fluid, CSF rhinorrhea can occur after surgery, injury or tumor, which we can diagnose by CT scan. Nasal secretion usually occur after the sneezing, itching or lacrimation. CSF fluid usually gushes out when bending is done, and it cannot be snipped back into the nasal cavity. But nasal secretion usually are continuous, and there is no effect of bending of the patient, and it can be sniffed back into the nasal cavity and from into the nasopharynx. CSF is usually watery and clear, otherwise nasal secretion be mucus and sometimes also virulent. It is sweet, where nasal secretion are salty. Sugar content is more mg per deciliter in CSF, but 10 mg per deciliter in nations. Beta 2 transferrin is specific for CSF, which is always present in CSF fluid, but beta 2 is always in nasal secretion. So students should have transferrin, which is specific for CSF. Main history that patient is that after injury or after diagnosis of tumor, patient has clear fluid which is coming from the nasal cavity, and more clear fluid coming when patient bends or strains. CSF remains clear when allowed to stand in a test tube. Nasal discharge leaves sediment. Nasal discharge usually stiffens the handkerchief, but that does not occur with the CSF. Localization of the CSF leak, that is to diagnose the where is CSF is leaking into the nasal cavity from the cranial fossa, is done by intrathecal injection of the fluorescein dye and placing the cotton plaquettes at different places in the nasal cavity. If a patient has a cribriform plate injury, whenever we put a cotton over the cribriform plate, and that fluorescent dye will come out from with the CSF will come into the cribriform plate, and the olfactory seat. So we can the patient has injury biform plate. Whenever there is a frontal or ethmoidal sinus injury, and that will go directly, that CSF will go drain into the middle meatus. So whenever we put middle cotton in the middle meatus, it will be suggestive of frontal and ethmoidal sinus injury. For the sphenoid sinus, it can give, the dye can reach up to the sphenoidal recess, and whenever there is the injury, that bone injury can dye into the nasopharynx. Nasopharynx is just situated near the opening and the meatus. Cutting the cotton plagets which are stained where in the nasal cavity and nasopharynx, we can diagnose the exact site of CSF leak. In traumatic CSF leak, double ring sign, that is also is usually seen. Central, there will be periphery will be because of CSF like a halo on a filter paper, in which you can see that there will be blood in the surrounding is of CSF. High resolution CT scan image can give you idea about the exact site of leakage over the anterior, middle or temporal region of the cranial fossa. CT cystogram or MRI cystogram can give you idea about the exact leak, in which there will be insertion of a fluorescent dye into the spinal cord, and from that the CSF will go into the brain. That patient can have CSF from that anterior cranial or middle cranial or temporal region fossa to into the nasal cavity with the fluorescent dye, and that fluorescent dye can give you the exact idea in the CT scan images about the exact leak, site of the leak. Post-traumatic cases usually managed conservatively. Patient is asked to avoid the blowing of the nose, to avoid the increase in the abdominal pressure, to avoid sneezing and straining. Prophylactic antibiotics should be started in this type of cases to prevent the development of meningitis. Patient should be putting in semi-sitting position. Whenever these conservative measures are not sufficient and patient had developed continuous persistent CSF leak, this requires surgical repair of the leak via nasal endoscopic, that is known as extended functional endoscopic sinus surgery, or external, extra and intracranial approaches, in which we will put a sheet of fascia or fat between the in the repair surgery of CSF leak. We will repair the leak by putting a fascia leak, and it will cause the rip, and there will be that will and into the PET, fascia or artificial material can be used to seal this nasal cavity. Thank you.